forever, and that's the conversation are we looking at as we even
as we invited the nation to this conversation on living with the virus. The reality, as we've mentioned, is that the virus is forever. So at some point you have to begin easing those restrictions. How do you go about it in a manner that ensures that people can go about as much of their lives as possible without compromising their health? One of the specific instances, schools, religious gatherings, social gatherings, for example, and or even sporting gatherings. And we have been, may I say, impressed or pleasantly surprised at the sheer load of suggestions that have come in from all across the country, from various stakeholder groups. The COVID-19 response task force, made up of the epidemiologists, the medical doctors, etc., has been engaging round the clock with these various groups. I think even today they've had some engagements with the religious leaders on the proposals for what should happen if churches and mosques are to be opened. What should happen if they are to be opened? And very interesting, Friday, His Excellency the President will be getting close to a decision point on what needs to happen, and then hopefully by the end of the week he will be updating the country on how to ease these restrictions as we move along.
We are expecting, or most sections are expecting, the President to speak to us this weekend. Do we anticipate that some of these easing of restrictions may be announced, so to speak?
I don't want to preempt what the President will be putting out because, like I said, the consultations are still ongoing. Even today, there are some of those consultations that are ongoing. But I think what Ghanaians should be confident in is that for everything that we are doing, we are being directed by the best of data and science and by the best of consultations. And it is in the midst of this data and science and consultations that the President will arrive at some decisions that would ensure that we don't put people at risk, but we are also able to ease into some sense of normalcy. And if indeed some of them must start immediately, he will announce those when he speaks to us.
And I would like us to dwell a bit more on easing the restrictions. Today we've heard the senior high school heads, the Conference of Senior High Schools, asking for students, teachers and non-teaching staff to be tested before they are allowed back into schools. What do you think about that suggestion, and what does that mean for the lower level schools, preschool and kindergarten, JHS and the rest?
So there's a mix of suggestions that have come in. There are those who say do not even allow anybody back in the schools except final years who are going to write their examination, so that you have a smaller cohort to deal with. We have about a little over 9 million Ghanaians in schools from various levels, from kindergarten way through to the tertiary levels. I think the number is about 9.4 last time I was briefed on it. There are those who say don't allow those who don't really have exams and other terminal activities to conduct to come in, just deal with the final years so that they can come in. There are smaller numbers, larger institutions, you can space them out and contain them, and then they go. Then you don't even require so many interventions, and within that smaller cohort then you can test and then let them go in. There are those who say no, you can let everybody go in but test everybody. The challenge with part of that suggestion is that the fact that I am tested today, and I've been tested like about 3 times, the fact that I'm tested today does not mean tomorrow morning I cannot contract it. So when you talk of testing, the question becomes, so are you going to test every day or every week or every 2 weeks or what? Apart from that, if you have about 9.4 million kids in school, from, as I mentioned, kindergarten through to tertiary level, how much does a test cost? And I mean, even if a test costs $1 per test.
We're told that the brief this morning it costs between 50 to 60, minus the cost of transporting the collected sample to the lab.
I just, if you want to make it easier for people, even if you said it's $1, I don't even want to go to the 50 that they are talking about. Even if it was $1, when you run one round of tests, that's about $9.4 million, assuming you are dealing with about 9.4 million kids out there. So if you spend 9.4 million and tomorrow morning kids can, or somebody could still test positive, how do you balance it out? So all of these conversations are ongoing. I can't predict what the final decision will be, because that's the essence of stakeholder engagement. But what I can say is that we're also taking advantage of the opportunity to explain to those who are making some of these propositions, the difficulties in some of those proposals. Things like disinfecting the schools, spraying, etc., or maybe reducing the numbers, etc., may be easy to do without spending so much money, but others that may be difficult to do, we may have to take a second look at those as well.
You did say that some consultations with stakeholders are being engaged, because obviously parents are very agitated.
Yes.
But NAGRAT and the TEWU and NAT have come out to oppose reopening of schools,
yes,
whilst the CHAS is calling for
yes,
a reopening. So what is the level of consultation if such, high-level teachers associations appear to have such varying degrees of engagement on this matter?
We are of the view that there's nothing wrong with having varying degrees of views on the matter. Indeed, even within the religious community, when you consult them, there are those who say yes, open, but don't allow more than, let's say, 100 people per service in whatever kind of facility. There are those who say don't open at all, now is not the time. It is the consultation that will give you these varying views. You also take advantage of the consultation and the varying views to explain to them, for example, those who say don't do it at all, to explain to them why you think that perhaps it can be done in a safe manner. For those who have another view, to also explain to them. So the consultations themselves do not mean that everybody will say yes, but it is a process of engagement for us to even realize something else that we may not be opening our eyes to. And I think, as I hinted last week during our conversation, if you take the school kids, there are those who raise their children from kindergarten to, let's say, class 3, class 4, not to touch each other or to stay away. The first thing they do when they meet each other is they are hugging. So maybe what you have to do is to just cut off at those numbers. And these are some of the suggestions that are coming through. So my point is that as you engage, you will find some middle ground. It doesn't mean everybody will agree from day one, but that is the essence of those engagements. And hopefully by Friday we should get a good compromise that we can then prepare to announce to the country on what to do.
So as things stand, and I want to spend just a few more minutes on education, because
please feel free.
Parents are very concerned. As things stand, the academic calendar stands disrupted.
Yes.
But some schools are demanding fees.
Yes.
And government has still not come up to say pay or not pay. What should parents do?
Because there are schools that purport to be offering online education. In fact, this morning, part of our consultation suggested that some of the public institutions are even running some sort of examinations online. For those who are doing nursing and a few other things, some of them are even doing examinations online. Government continues to engage, and it is in the midst of this engagement that we can have clarity whether this purported online education and online examination makes sense or suffices and therefore should be supported, or whether it is such that it is something that cannot be supported and therefore government will have to make a pronouncement to say discontinue this exercise. Again, I make the point that those consultations, by the time they are done with, will help us have clarity on what the next line is, and His Excellency the President will lead us with a clear announcement on that.
Right. Let's rest education for now. Let's focus on our borders. This week we had what some would call a large consignment of nationals coming into the country from Kuwait. And in relation to this immigration, we've had dozens of messages on our social media platforms telling us to ask you one key question. And we've had these from a number of people. Kwejo Ahudo from Accra, Richmond Nyako from England. A few names have sent us this same question. And they say, can the minister tell us when the borders will be open?
I cannot tell you when the borders will be open as I speak to you now. Here's why. The decision that was made to keep the borders closed remains until the end of this month. We are going through a process of examining what it takes to safely open the borders. Now, that process has a number of things involved. For example, are you going to say that everybody can come but must be tested from where they are before they come in? It's one possibility. If you say that, what do you make of the various testing systems and methods the world over? There are those who are using the RDT test in their country. those bodies. It doesn't give you the PCR COVID-19 confirmations that we are talking about. Can you rely on that? Then there are a number of countries that are doing the PCR tests, which are quite expensive, about $50 per test. Are you going to say what the state will pay or these persons will pay? There are those who say
over 200 from Kuwait.
I'll come and deal with that one. There are those who say let them come and then you mandatorily quarantine all of those persons. The data we have is that prior to COVID-19, every week you had up to about 50,000 travelers coming through the Kotoka International Airport every week. If you say let them come and let us test them locally, and if you have 50,000 people showing up in a week, where and how are you going to mandatorily quarantine all of them at a go and ensure that you test and isolate and treat? That becomes another hurdle. So what we are doing is that government is examining the data that has come in on a case-by-case basis, or what we call a cohort-by-cohort basis. So for example, for these 230 Kuwaitis, or 230 Ghanaians who were in Kuwait, the Kuwaiti government made a request that they want to return them to Ghana.
But here is the case, all our borders are closed.
Yes.
And several calls have been made for certain categories of people to be allowed either in or out.
Yes.
But all those have been blocked. So then the question arises,
why
what was
this
the
cohort?
emergency?
And
why did they need to come home immediately?
I would explain. As I've mentioned, the policy is that it's been examined on a cohort-by-cohort basis. You would notice that even while our borders have been closed, we give permits for example, charter flights to come in and take foreign nationals out through their embassies. I think last week or so, there was one such question and I asked the person to get in touch with their embassy. So the embassies have been organizing charter flights for their nationals so that they can be ferried out, because that doesn't pose any risk to us. In the case of these 230 Ghanaians in Kuwait, the Kuwaiti government made a request that they would want to return them to Ghana. The Ghana government examined that cohort and came to the view that we have the ability to mandatorily quarantine and test these 230 persons and then process them and be sure that we don't have any positive persons getting into the general population. Even for them, the view is that after the first test, they will be held for 14 days to do a second test before they're allowed into the general population. So having examined this cohort, that decision was made. The examination of the cases of the other cohorts, remember, government asked the missions to make information available. A lot of people submitted information. So the examination of all of those other cohorts is ongoing. And when it becomes feasible to make a decision that a particular cohort can be admitted into the jurisdiction under particular circumstance and quarantined and tested, that decision will be made and an announcement made. But our hearts go out to all our compatriots who are out there. It's a difficult situation. We get calls on a daily basis. People who've run out of money, people who can't afford a hotel. There were some who were sleeping rough, sometimes on the streets or in front of hotel call situation. But we have to balance their desire to come home with the protection of the local population back home and the need not to compromise the work that is going on back home. And it is in the midst of that balance that the cohort by cohort examination is currently ongoing. And as and when a decision is made, we'll be more than happy to update both them and the entire nation where we are going.
Honorable Minister, Ghanaians have questions and they want to put it to you directly. We create an opportunity on this platform for them to ask those questions directly to you. We have a few of those ones and I'll give you the opportunity to listen. There's quite about 3 or 4 of them that are ready now. Listen, and then when we come back, you have the opportunity to listen. So if those questions are ready, we'll have them now.
I would like to find out from the minister if the relief package is for startups and whether I qualify if my micro business is yet to be registered.
Hello, good morning. And please, I am Adon from Ho. I want to know how far the government has gone with the finding of herbal solution to the virus. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Please, my name is Yao Safo from Accra. I want to find out from the minister what government is doing to ensure that there's some sort of uniformity in the payment of school fees in these private institutions in the wake of this COVID-19 thing, because most of them are operating these Zoom platforms and e-learning platforms which we are paying for. And school has ended for last term and they have brought us bills for this term, but surprisingly they are giving us discount of 10%, 15% and all that, which is unfair, because if the kids are at home and we are virtually buying data and helping them with their working as teachers, as their parents, they should be charging us, if anything at all, should be for tuition. But they do not consider all these things. They just lump it all together and say 10% discount. It is unfair, and I really think government should be also looking at all these things to ensure that there's some sort of uniformity and fairness in the way they go about charging parents to pay fees. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for sending those messages ahead of time, sending us voice notes. You're watching hashtag Ask the Info Ministry. We are coming to you live from the studios of Broadcasting House in Accra. The Honorable Minister for Information, Abokojo Ponkroma, is with us. He's answering questions. You've just heard from those who have sent theirs already ahead of time, and I'll give the Honorable Minister the opportunity to respond. They're yet to be registered businesses. Can they benefit from the package? Herbal solutions and then uniformity in payment of fees. Then we'll quickly go to social media and get the questions.
Thomas, so let's start with the startups. The Coronavirus Alleviation Package Business Support Fund is supposed to support businesses that were negatively hit, or small-scale business, micro, medium, small-scale businesses that were negatively hit as a result of the slowdown in the general economy. What that means, sadly, is that it is not necessarily for startups. It is for those who are already in business and who were very negatively affected as a result of the slowdown in economic activity. And so startups will not be truth that they've actually been in business for a while, perhaps even demonstrate that they've been paying their taxes when times were good for them, so that now that the state is also lending a helping hand through these banks, it's easy to identify these people and to work with them. Because if you don't do that, all sorts of people will show up claiming to start up a business and come for a bit of that money. But the focus for this particular fund is to assist micro, medium, small scale enterprises that were negatively hit. Herbal Solutions is...
she had the second part about yet to be registered business. So if you have a provision shop, you have a barbering salon, and you haven't registered the business, can you...
Well, all of these businesses are supposed to have been registered and be known to at least the local assembly, one way or the other. You have a local business operating permit, and these are local registrations that they do. That should be able to suffice that you have been in business to prove that you are indeed an existent business that has suffered negatively as a result of this. In the absence of that, it may be difficult for people popping up to say, I had a business, but I had not registered it. You have to put down some guidelines, else you could run into trouble even administering some of these funds.
Herbal remedies.
Yes, and that is one of the very interesting subjects. Indeed, this morning, for example, my colleague, the Minister responsible for Health, Honorable Kwajima, who is now serving also additionally on the WHO advisory team, is chairing a meeting dealing with the Association of Herbal Medicine Producers. And currently about 33 samples of herbal products have been submitted to the Ministry of Health. And the big phrase they are using is to help in the treatment of COVID-19 cases.
In quote.
In quote. Now, you put it into two groups. There are those who claim that their preparations have antiviral properties, that they can actually deal with the virus and, for want of a better expression, extinguish it, defeat the virus. And then there are also those who say that because COVID-19 is a viral infection and can be defeated if you have a strong immune system, what they have prepared are what they call immune boosters, which can boost your immune system for your immune system to overcome the COVID-19 virus or the SARS-CoV-2 virus itself. Now, both categories have to go through a number of tests. There are about two levels. The Center for Herbal and Plant Medicine at Mampong is one of the first places to make a determination which category it is falling into, and they've already started testing some of these, that's my understanding. And then there is also the FDA that must have an opportunity to test and be sure that this meets the necessary Food and Drug Standards. So they are going through a process of engagements at their own level, even coming up with their own recommendations on the kind of safety tests that should be carried out. As we speak now, we do not have any that is recommended by the FDA necessarily as for COVID-19. But the FDA, the Center for Plant and Herbal Medicine, continue to go through their various processes. And if they do come to the various categories, whether it's got antiviral properties or it's for immune boosting, they will do well to let the world know what they have.
And while we are on the subject of remedies and local solutions, is there a plan for the Ministry of Health to engage experts to tell us what to do right? Because as it stands, people have begun, for example, cooking up their own remedies at home, applying our own traditional herbs with the hope of getting ahead of the virus. Is there going to be an advice on what limits or to what extent people can drink neem tree, or to what extent we can eat dawa dawa and prekese and all those things? Is there a plan of that sort?
I mean, there are things like kontomire and dawa dawa, etc., that we eat and we are encouraged to eat. Those don't necessarily come with prescriptions or quantums. Those are more or less like food or nutritional items that we eat. But for those who are preparing what they call herbal products, which they believe can be immune boosters, etc., they will have to pass through the FDA and the Center for Plant and Herbal Medicine for them to do the testing and tell us that if this is an immune booster, what you need is it 2 capsules or 3 spoonfuls or whatever of it. So it will still rest at the FDA and the Center for Plant and Herbal Medicine for them to do that testing and then that recommendation for us. Until then, all of us will stay away from that space, and we encourage all of those who have these herbal mixtures, herbal items, to go to the Center for Plant and Herbal Medicine and to the FDA, for the FDA and the Center for Plant and Herbal Medicine, to do the investigation and the analysis and tell us what it is. And then we can all be happy and perhaps even tell the world that, well, we've got something in Ghana that can help us, whether on the immune boosting side or perhaps on the antiviral side.
Madagascar went that way. It's introduced what it thought could be a helpful possible remedy for what we all battle against today. And last week you told us that some findings were being made where Ghana's efficaciousness or testing of the efficacy of the tonic is concerned. Where do we stand on that, especially now that Madagascar has left the WHO?
Well, so again, I think after last week's show, a bit of our commentary generated some misinterpretation. Let me be quite clear on it. Madagascar has reached out to us that they have what they call a herbal potion which they believe can cure COVID-19. And like we are doing with all of these other 33 local ones that I'm talking about, we are saying that the Center for Plant and Herbal Medicine and the FDA will have to test, determine how efficacious it is, and advise us. That policy has not changed. And if indeed those tests are conducted and whatever they have in Madagascar does meet the standards that even if they were from Ghana they will meet, we will be informed by the FDA and the Center for Plant and Herbal Medicine.
Right. Before we take more questions, the third one that we played on the voice notes was about uniformity
of payment in school fees
and fairness.
So you do know that for the public institutions, the Ghana Education Service, even with capitation grants, etc., can make a pronouncement on what ought to be paid and what ought not to be paid. But for private institutions, we are not living in a price control era. It becomes very difficult for you to tell private institutions how much to charge or not to charge. Part of our freedoms as a country which we enjoy means that whoever is running his private institution can charge a certain amount that they deem fit for the service that they are going to roll out there. Is it true that a lot of parents are complaining that they are still purporting to, or a lot of schools are still purporting to charge the same amount with some small discounts, while parents are having to buy data and provide supervision at home?
And teach.
That is true. There are a lot of complaints. But the Ghana Education Service is being careful because they cannot be dictating to all of these schools what fees to charge, etc. And they continue to monitor the situation. As I mentioned earlier, the President has also asked for some work to be done on determining truly how impactful is this so-called online learning that schools are claiming to do and are charging X or Y or Z amount. for that. When they come to their conclusion or what they are finding, I'm sure the Ghana Education Service will be guided if they can make any pronouncement in that light. But until then, we are living in this kind of era. We can only use what they call in finance or economics moral suasion to these schools. But you see, you have to balance that with what's happening on the other side. I think just last week or so, we had teachers from private schools saying they hadn't been paid for a number of months. When you speak to some of the school,
we still have some concerns coming in today on that.
When you speak to some of the school proprietors, they say they can't cut down those salaries. And so what they need to do is that even though they are doing online tuition, they need to take these money so that they can ensure that that side is also dealt with. So it's a complex thing, but you can only be guided by the data that comes in. And if the Ghana Education Service is obliged to make a pronouncement on that, they will also do so.
Okay, here's a message from Emmanuel Frimpong, and he's asking, I would like to ask if we are to go back to school, will we go for break time? I would like to suggest that we should go to school on daily routines, that is basic 1 to 3 on Monday, 4 to 6 on, some kind of shift system. Is that being considered?
There have been proposals to that effect, that there should be a shift system. In fact, there are other proposals to the effect that even within the shift system, break time should be scheduled at different times of the day. That maybe class 4 students go for break at 9 o'clock, class 5 students go for break at 10, class 6 go at 11, just so that you have a lot more space out there. There are those who say if you let just the final years come, you have more space, you can socially distance. So a mix of proposals. But as I mentioned earlier, the task force is continuing to engage with them. Hopefully they'll come to some good compromises, and we'll hear by the end of the week.
Here's another one from Akoto. Akoto is sending us a message from Kung, and he's asking a number of questions, some of which we've answered already. So this is, what is the level of consultation with private schools concerning the reopening? Because the perception is that only Nat, Tewu and the rest are the ones being consulted on this matter. So are there broader consultations?
There are broader consultations. You see, Thelma, the trick is that these consultations are not being done in the public domain or on radio and TV. So sometimes what will happen is that if you hear of Nat or Tewu speaking publicly, you think that they are the only ones that are being consulted or are giving a view. But a lot of these, if I didn't tell you that today the religious bodies are being engaged, you probably wouldn't know.
Abina from OEB, thank you for sending us those messages. And Abina wants to know if there's anybody with comorbidity who has recovered. I'm hypertensive, and at the moment I'm a nervous wreck and having panic attacks. Abina, calm down. The minister is here to answer your question or find answers for you.
So I think one of the first things we will tell Abina is to ensure that she abides by the preventive etiquette. She socially distances from other persons. She does well to wear her mask, and above all ensures that her hands, which will be the most common way of picking the virus from a surface, and if she's touching her eyes or her nose or her mouth, pass it on to herself. She ensures that they are washed with soap and the running water, or she uses hand sanitizers regularly. But yes, there are people with comorbidities who have not died. It just so happens that I think about 90% or so of those who have died have had comorbidities, but it does not mean that you don't contract it. But even beyond that, there are people with comorbidities who have not died, and we are optimistic that you will not contract it if you abide by the preventive etiquette.
One comment on our Facebook: we are streaming this program live on the Ministry of Information Facebook page, also on the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation Facebook page. Some comments are coming in from there, and I'm reading them as well. St. John is asking the Information Minister, what is FDA doing about COA-FS?
Well, I would have to find out what they are doing about COA-FS. I do not know what the specific challenge is. I would have to find out. I do know that there have been some back and forth conversations where the FDA mentioned that some of their products did not meet a particular standard. And by the way, they have not said that COA-FS is a cure. I think it was a product that they thought was an immune booster. But beyond the product being an immune booster, I think the FDA said that specifically some of their products on the market did not meet a particular standard, and they needed to do some work. And I think COA-FS objected to that. But there are protocols at the FDA, if you don't agree with their testing and their findings, that you go through. It's not by public statements and public agitation with them. So until we hear anything further on that matter, the status quo as the FDA has announced is what we will all comply with. I do not know if there's anything beyond that, but until then, the status quo of the FDA is what we'll comply with.
Let's shift attention quickly, and this is a very somber one, because We've lost 32 nationals to this virus, or persons in this instance to do so. How are families being engaged to make this possible? Because we are a society of cultural norms and traditions, and respect for the departed is high on those norms. How are families being engaged and supported to send their loved ones off?
For the persons who are described as COVID-19 related deaths, that's what you're talking about,
yes.
Right? Well, the Ghana Health Service is the one tasked with leading that exercise. So the clinicians that handled these persons before their unfortunate passing are the ones who are supposed to help lead the engagement with these families and ensure that the necessary burial protocols are observed and the necessary protections are observed when these persons are to be finally interred.
This is a message we've received from David. He said, I'm David, a recovered COVID-19 affected person. I want to appeal to the minister to pay a surprise visit to the PCC isolation center because the medical officers there find it difficult to get close to patients, and they are often compelled to take their temperatures themselves, as well as lack of machines, I suppose. Honorable Minister, have you heard
Pentecost
of the challenges?
Center? Yes, there was an initial report of people being displeased with the conditions there. We brought it to the attention of the Ghana Health Service. They moved in within 24 hours and assured us that they had acted upon it. And since then, we have not received any negative feedback until this one that I'm picking up from David. So what I'll do is that tonight when the President sits at 6 p.m. to take the update, we will bring it to the attention of the Ghana Health Service and ensure that some follow-up work is done on that. I'll ask my team to make a note of it so that tonight we can follow up on it.
I'll keep a copy here for you. Thank you, David, for sending that information, and this and other reasons are why we think this platform is very necessary to also add your voice to the public discourse. Here's another message from our Facebook pages, and he said, I want to find out from the Honorable Minister, why is the government refusing to accept local herbal medicine? And I think he's just answered it, but
no, we have not refused to accept local herbal medicine. I'm just telling you that about 33 samples have been submitted through the Ministry of Health to the appropriate testing agencies, and they are the ones that will do the work and update us on the next line forward.
Kwame Mafo is asking the minister, please, I want to appeal to the government to get the kids Chromebooks, that is for children at the primary level. Honorable Minister, have you heard of the kids Chromebooks?
No, I have not heard of them. I'll be happy to be educated on what it is and how it can help us. We're happy to learn.
Like you said, the level of public engagement and the kinds of suggestions that have come up since the coronavirus has been exceptional, and it tells you that the Ghanaian is up to task to handle whatever the situation throws at us. You're still watching Ask the Info Ministry live on GBC News and GTV. We are here with the Honorable Minister for Information, the Honorable Kwadwo Nkrumah. He's answering your questions and ours in the studio about where we are on our COVID-19 fight, as well as where we hope to be in future, and more questions keep coming in, so the minister is not off the hook yet. Join the conversation by sending us your WhatsApp messages. The number is 055-744-6249. WhatsApp number is 055-744-629, and you can also call us, and the phone lines will be opened. The number to call us is 026-096-9160. The number to call is 026-096-9160. Call us and hashtag Ask the Info Ministry. The minister is here and he'll answer all your questions. Honorable Minister, one of the issues that also keep coming up is why the repatriation program, as some are calling it, has not been extended to other countries. So we spoke about Kuwait a bit earlier.
Yeah.
Richmond Asumenin Owari is asking us on Facebook, please, did the Foreign Ministry extend the repatriation program to Ghanaians in Canada?
Well, as I speak to you now, there is no repatriation program per se as a first step. What has happened is that Ghanaians who were in Kuwait, some Ghanaians who were in Kuwait, were represented to us by the Kuwaiti government that they would like to return them home. And the government of Ghana looked at the number and came to the view that we were able to contain the situation and therefore admitted them into the jurisdiction. They are currently in mandatory quarantine. 230 of them, their samples have been taken. And for those who test negative, they will be kept for 14 days and then their second samples taken before they're allowed into the general population. But we have gathered data from around the world on Ghanaians who would like to come back home. And it is being examined on a cohort by cohort basis. And as and when the state comes to a decision that a particular cohort can be assisted in similar manner, it will be decided and announced to us as a country.
Thank you. So I believe the minister has answered questions. Here's another comment. So many views we are having on Facebook. This one, Nana Anania J says, opening school at this time is very risky looking at how the virus spreads. It will be best to cancel this term and start when the level or degree of infections decline. Is that an option on the table?
Yes, it is an option.
It is an
option. What is important, Thelma, is that we have the conversation now. For example, if you say now is not the time, the question is when is the time? So that time be tagged to, let's say, when the active case count hits a particular threshold or when the world finds a vaccine or next term. What shows us that by next term, the world would have found a vaccine or any of the circumstances around us would have changed. So it is important to start that conversation now and even determine when will be a good time. That is a conversation that is currently ongoing. At the same time, on the other hand, there are kids whose exams are due. There are kids who, if they don't have an opportunity to get some education, instruction and examination, they may also miss an opportunity. So you need to have those conversations now and make that determination or even determine what is your measure of success. So it is the conversation that has started. We have not said that we are opening schools now. What we have said is that we are having a conversation now about when is appropriate, how is appropriate to allow some sort of education to resume in our schools.
Godfred has joined us on telephone from Ashaiman, and I believe he has a question for the Information Minister. Hello, Godfred. Welcome to Ask the Info Ministry. Please go ahead with your question or comment. The Minister is listening.
Yeah, I just want to comment.
I think we've lost Godfred there, but he started with a commendation. So you must be doing something right, or Ghana must be doing something right. And I just know that he will try to call us back. There also was a concern, Honorable Minister, when we're putting this together, and it was about the wearing of masks and the hazards that it could bring. One message that I got from a gentleman named Samuel Cranting was very concerned about people wearing the mask the wrong way, or people with certain conditions that do not allow them probably to wear the mask, or if there was anything to be done to educate people on the implications of doing it wrong.
So the Ghana Health Service has published guidelines for wearing of the masks. If you go to the Ministry of Information Facebook page, as well as other media outlets across the country where we broadcast, you will find videos on the most appropriate way to wear and to take off the masks, how long you can wear the mask, how long you should not wear the masks. And we encourage people to pay attention. It's in various languages, to pay attention and to observe how to do it. The masks are not chin masks. If I just may demonstrate, there are those who are in the habit of wearing the masks like so. You have not worn the mask. In fact, when you do this, you have not worn the mask because your nostrils are still exposed. The mask is supposed to be worn as such to cover your nostrils and your mouth so that droplets don't come out as and when you're speaking, or even if you are in touch with somebody, those droplets don't come close to these parts of your body. And so our prayer to our viewers out there is that they pay attention to the videos that educate us on how to wear and take off the mask. I'm sure you saw how I held on to the strings only and not be touching the face of the mask.
Ahmed has joined us from Kumasi to ask the Information Minister a question. Ahmed.
Hello.
Yes, good afternoon. Let's hear your question or comment.
Yes, my question is about we the Form 3 students.
Go ahead, the Minister is listening.
Please, our examination. I've been hearing that they said there will be 1 month for us to write the exams, and they will compile the papers too. So I want to ask if it's true.
Thank you, Ahmed. Your question would be answered.
Ahmed, no such decision has been made. Indeed, the consultations to arrive at a decision are currently ongoing, and it is when those consultations are completed that proper announcement will be made on what it means for you out there. So keep calm. And Thelma, you do know that at this time there's a lot of fake news and misinformation flying all over. Keep calm. The official government channels like the state broadcaster, Ghana Television, the Ministry of Information, the Office of the President will put out the official correct decisions that have been made. So calm down, don't be apprehensive, and stay away from the rumors.
I hope that you had your answer. Honorable Minister, there was one issue. Someone sent us a message. Daniel in Accra. He said, where are the nose masks the Vice President promised they were going to distribute to Ghanaians? And why are we getting more cases in routine surveillance? Daniel from Accra.
So I'm not quite sure I recall the Vice President saying that we're going to distribute free nose masks to people. What we have said is that we are producing nose masks or face masks locally. Primarily for the health workers, because globally it's difficult to have a lot of these PPEs in supply, and we've produced tens of thousands locally and we've made them more available.
But once he said that, is there a plan to possibly distribute nose masks to those who we believe could not be able to afford?
So you would find that some of the local authorities, some of the district assemblies, some of the development authorities are making a bit of it available. In my constituency, for example, we have done about 10,000 nose masks between my office and the office of the DC, and we've distributed for free to support those who we believe cannot actually make one or afford one. The Coastal Development Authority, my brother Jerry Shaib, they've done I think over about 70,000, which they're also distributing across the coastal area. And I do know that many parts of the country are doing same at the local level. At the national level, there will be some categories of persons who will get some free masks. For example, you notice that the security officials who've been working on the beat, they get masks because of the job that they are doing. We expect that if schools will reopen, there should be some level of provision of masks for teaching, non-teaching staff, students as well. So there will be some categories of persons who will get some. But I think the general admonition is that we all have to do our best to get one or make one, or for those of us who can afford to get one, and to get one for somebody as well, because it is our personal protection and we need to take it seriously.
So Daniel, the minister has addressed your question. Amma has called us from McCarthy Hill. Amma, welcome to Ask the Info Ministry.
Okay, thank you very much.
Please go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. I'd just like to know, during this coronavirus, the pandemic, is it legal for landlords to demand for rent?
Is it legal for landlords to demand rent?
During this period? Or is it legal for landlords to, sack their tenants for not paying for the rent? As a lot of people are not working during this period.
Amma, thank you for the question. Honorable Minister, is it legal for landlords to demand rent when people are not working?
Ordinarily, if you owe rent, you pay. But the
I hope Amma's landlord is not listening.
But the Rent Control Act also provides some protections for tenants who may be in various forms of difficulties. And I think, if I recall what the Minister responsible for Works and Housing announced at our press briefing, landlords are being encouraged in accordance with the Act that now is not a time to be evicting tenants. And if your landlord seeks to be evicting you at this point in time, the Rent Control Office is a good avenue to lodge a complaint and explain your status to them, and they can intervene on your behalf at this point in time. But we ask our colleagues that, listen, we're not in ordinary times. Now is the time to put a human face to every transaction and to every endeavor. Even the tax authorities, the Registrar General's Department, are given more time for people to file their tax returns, because we understand that we're not in ordinary times, and we encourage landlords out there to do same. But if they are giving you a tough time, you may want to talk to the rent control authorities as well.
Thank you. Godfred has called us back from Ashaiman. Godfred, thanks for calling back. What's your comment or question?
Please, I just want to thank the Honorable Minister for all these programs, but I don't know, this is my first time, so just take it from me like this. And I just want to thank the government for being good to us, for helping us by this. At first, I couldn't like this MPP government, but I love the way the Nana Fado government is just dealing with this pandemic. So I just want to say a big thank you to this government, and it should continue helping us.
Thank you, Godfred. And I'm sure the minister is happy that you called back to make.
Well, it's good feedback for us. The president continues to make the point that we have an obligation to the people of Ghana in times like this to ensure that the necessary levels of protection and also in particular transparency, the necessary levels of transparency and public engagement is brought to bear to assuage the public apprehension and to give people an opportunity to understand what is going on and also to protect themselves. So we thank him for his feedback. We'll continue to do our best. I'll pass his feedback to the president.
I'm sure he would appreciate it. We have another caller on the line. Hello, your name and where you're calling from. I think we may have lost.
Paul calling from Kaswa.
Paul, thank you for joining us. What's your question or comment for the minister?
A gentleman just spoken saying that landlords do not take rent. Meanwhile, there are certain tenants who have spoiled my keys, my doors, and everything, and I need to maintain all those things. And I expect him to pay some 6 months or 5 months in order to maintain all those very things that he has spoiled. So I was insisting of asking him to pay from 6 months.
Thank you, Paul.
So that I can give him at least moratorium to pay the rest.
Thank you,
in
Paul.
Another time.
Paul just had to make that. He had to put that quickly in there that some tenants are not also fulfilling their end of the of the obligations, and I don't think that's for the minister directly. Honorable Minister, there's a question here from Ali. He is a teacher, a private school teacher, and he's saying that because of the situation, he has not been paid, and he's really suffering. He said, I have not been paid since March. I have a family to take care of. I don't have any money. Can I apply for some of the money before I die?
Well, so it is the schools or that a determination made accordingly. So we would encourage his school to be the one to put in an application to that effect.
Ayensu is calling us from the Central Region. Hello, Ayensu. Thanks for joining us on Ask the Info Ministry.
Yeah, it's a pleasure speaking to you. I'm called Kubagi.
Please, what's your question or comment for the minister?
Mine is just recommendation. I really appreciate the way the information minister is doing his work. One thing is my wife, the way he had this information minister is actually, I don't know, my wife likes him a lot. He said the man is working when he compared to other ministers and other things. So we say kudos to his work, and I hope to see him. I'm the former UPC communication director for Pescom. So definitely I'll find a day and come and see him. The way my wife like him, you should continue doing his work. God bless him.
Well, that is.
But I serve at the pleasure of the president. I work on behalf of about 35 other ministers, and I am just supposed to help bring light to what they do. So I take his commendation as commendation for the entire team that is doing the work. But Thelma, very quickly, let me mention that very good work and the leadership is brought to the ministry and the results that Ghana is showing. And I think that it's something that is worth mentioning on a day like this. Also, today we're also taking notice of doing a walking, and we should celebrate all of them as well.
I believe that was inspiration from the England case, where 100-year-old captain this pandemic. Honorable Minister saying,
well, I must be honest, then there was a first item I referred to my team.
How can I get my loved one?
It's a position that this loved one also were handling the case at the hospital. The clinician who was handling it will be in the best position to connect you to the teams that are responsible for.
In your engagement since the last time you
standing issues that perhaps we are left with doing some more education on is how to understand the numbers. Because often what people do is be concerned so that you text, and we have to do some more education. So unfortunately we've lost 32. So as we speak right now, just about 5 p.m. this Tuesday evening, 4,835 are the people who really have it currently.
But that's also quite a high number.
That is quite a high number, but that's just to put our numbers in context. And our objective is to work towards getting more recoveries and less.
The Ministry of Health told us at the briefing earlier today that about 800 people are in isolation.
Occasionally you have one or two who are obstinate because our method allows us to find them asymptomatic. So there are some who, and in the monitoring that they are giving them, but those who, based on the profiling, and there are those who also, when you say they should be treated in a health facility, indeed, just as I was coming, I got a request from one lecturer who says, just ferret that information to the Ghana Health Service.
30 seconds, Honorable Minister. The President most likely will speak to us on Sunday. What should we expect?
We should expect that the same care and concern for the average Ghanaian with which he has handled this matter from the very beginning is what he will bring to bear, should be fine at the end of the day.
The MOI flagship program, #AskTheInfoMinistry. On this platform, you get the opportunity to add